Welcome to the Jeremiah Patterson Show, and thank you for joining me. Yes, we did bring it back. From democracy to transportation in the United States, this is your TJPS Morning News Rundown. Texas Republican Congressman Roy Chipp introduced a bill that could take the right to vote away from millions of Americans. In his legislation, it would require all U.S. citizens to present documentary proof of citizenship, meaning passports and birth certificates. But the problem is, a lot of Americans don't have passports because A, they're expensive, and B, many have never traveled outside the country. So that's one way Republicans are looking to restrict your access to vote. Another concerning part here is, according to the Trying Times, up to 69 million married women's birth certificate don't match their current legal names. What this would do essentially is eliminate online voter registration because you have to show proof in person, which is going to affect disabled, rural, and elderly voters who find voting by mail to be convenient. And by the way, that would end voting by mail as well. I mean, it's not too far-fetched from what Donald Trump recommends, getting rid of voting by mail completely, something he said upon winning the 2024 election. If this were to be signed and passed into law, which is highly likely under a Republican-controlled Congress, about 146 million Americans without passports would face voter registration barriers, and 42 states would have to dismantle their online voter registration system. If you are opposed to this, which millions of Americans are, the Trying Times gives you a guide on how to do something about it, including a script when you can call your respective members of Congress about this. It is a must-see in regard to grassroots resistance and a particularly key moment in the United States. Also, in regard to the situation that we're facing right now, something that I touched on yesterday about a constitutional crisis that's taking form here, with the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, essentially tweeting that the President of the United States and the White House are not essentially legally binded by court orders, by judicial rulings. Something that we're actively seeing, that we actively saw yesterday, is a federal judge say that the Trump administration effectively was in defiance of a federal court order ruling. Essentially, they defied it. The ruling went down. The Trump administration just completely ignored that. This is a situation that we are facing here. The constitutional crisis is no longer hypothetical. It is here. We are facing a constitutional crisis in the United States. Also, Elon Musk and a group of young teenage hackers got into essential government organizations and agencies, especially regarding our nuclear secrets in the United States. That is something that I talked about on the Jeremiah Patterson Show and a special report that we did last night on the show regarding Doge in the United States. That is a must-see special report. It's on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check that out. But it's concerning here in regard to what's happening. It's not surprising, but it's concerning. The dictatorship, the beginning of the oligarchy, the beginning of the moment of constitutional crisis has taken form. And you were asking me, some of you are asking me essentially for a book of the month. I will say in regard to that, first of all, my book, Resistance, go check that out. It's a great book, Resistance here. But if you want to know more about how democracies die, especially the electoral road to breakdown, check this out, How Democracies Die Here. Because in this book, they essentially talk about the electoral road to breakdown in terms of democracy is more dangerously deceptive. Coups don't happen that are typically violent, or tanks aren't rolled out into the streets. The military does not actively go and start shooting civilians by the order of the leader of the country at the time. That does not always happen when it comes to the current iteration of democracies dying. What we have just seen with Trump defying a federal court order, that is a modern example of democracy dying and democracy eroding. That is something to keep an eye on. All right. Segment number 2, mass deportation. In Oklahoma, the Board of Education recently voted to approve a proposal that would require parents to prove citizenship when enrolling parents. The measure was passed 6-0 and requires the state legislator and governor to officially essentially take effect. But its implications are horrific here. However, despite this going into effect here, a 1982 Supreme Court ruling affirms that education is for all. In Plyer versus Doe, a 5-4 vote indicated that states can cannot constitutionally deny students a free public education because of their immigration status, citing the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. This is from the ruling here, quote, "By denying these children a basic education, we deny them the ability to live within the structure of our civic institutions and foreclose any realistic possibility that they will contribute even in the smallest way to the progress of our nation." End quote. That was 1982. It is 2025. These are different times. Back in 1982, you didn't actively have people trying to actually defy court orders and potentially not even listen to what the Supreme Court says anymore. But that's something that could very well happen here in 2025 as democracy is dead. Okay. Sorry for saying it like that. But we are here. It is 2025. 77 million Americans just put a wannabe demagogue dictator back into office. Project 2025 is real. I feel like that statement is warranted. We are going to move on. This is a story to keep an eye on here because the state superintendent, essentially is implementing this among other rules because that state superintendent himself is pro-Trump. I mean, he recently said that there should be Trump Bibles in all Oklahoma schools. This guy is so radical that he's not ruling out the possibility of ICE raids happening in Oklahoma schools, including elementary schools as well. Essentially adding that the schools should comply with the rules of it when the time comes. In response to that, State Representative Democrat Annie Mins and Ward 7 council member Stephen Tyler Holman said that it's immoral. Quote, "ICE agents going into our schools and taking children out of the schools is unconscionable to me. There's no humanity in that. I don't see how anybody could possibly think that that's okay. It doesn't make us safer at all. It makes us less safe as a community if that's happening." End quote. On a national scale, the Trump administration is angry with the number of mass deportations right now and wants to speed it up, ordering ICE to bypass the courts and to continue going after Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, Venezuelans, Mexicans, and other migrants here illegally born here or obtained birthright citizenship. Even just being overheard speaking Spanish is grounds for arrest, something that alludes back to our history as a nation. You can watch our video about that in my channel, the YouTube channel, where I talk about the history of mass deportation in the United States. Trump is so serious about this that his dog killer Homeland Security Secretary reached out to the IRS and said, "Hey, can we borrow some IRS agents to track down essentially the financial records potentially of illegal migrants in this country?" What? Yes, that is happening. Dog killer Kristi Noem, which I will continue calling her that because that's what she is. I mean, who else among us kills a dog for one, and then writes a book about killing the dog, and then potentially gets selected to be the vice president of the United States by Trump, but oh, that's too extreme, so I'm just going to put her as the Secretary of Homeland Security, like that's a better position. Moving on, segment number 3, tariffs. Donald Trump announced new tariffs yesterday. Here's what that means and why that matters. This is reporting here from NBC News.
Tonight, as part of his campaign pledge to rebuild the American steel industry, President Trump slapping new 25% tariffs on foreign steel and aluminum imports.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. This is the beginning of making America rich again.
Some American steelworkers now praising the move.
That happens, it's going to help our industry. We're going to be able to regroup, and we're going to be able to stay alive.
But critics argue the tariffs will drive up prices for U.S. consumers. Discount store owner Peter Elitzer worries they'll hurt his bottom line. Are you worried that this will hurt your bottom line?
There's no question about it, because we'll have to absorb some of that, which is tough in a business that works on tight margins anyway. And it will also be problematic for the economy generally.
And the president promising new tariffs this week on countries that restrict the sale of American goods.
Reciprocal tariffs, and very simply, it's if they charge us, we charge them. That's all.
The tariff.
You voted for Trump because you thought he's going to bring down your prices? Come here, let's have a little talk. So, in the 1930s, there were these two senators that got together to essentially create a bill to bring down prices and ease the economic pain of the American people. And what ended up transpiring is that they did get together. They wrote a tariff bill. Boy, it was bad. After World War I, many countries' economies were essentially struggling with crippling debt or on the verge of economic recession. In the United States, it was the Great Depression that transpired. And this tariff bill was debated by Senator Smoot and as well as Senator Hawley. And what happened ultimately is the bill went through. It passed both houses and it went to the president's desk for signature. And over 1,000 economists told Hoover, no, do not sign this bill. It's going to be terrible for the economy. It's going to make things worse. Hoover did not listen. The bill went into law. The tariffs went into effect. And the Hawley-Smoot tariff raised prices on over 20,000 imported goods to record levels. And do you seriously think tariffs helped the economy? No, it made everything worse. Tariffs were completely detrimental because what essentially happened is the rest of the world reacted to the tariffs by saying, okay, we'll just raise our prices too. We'll just go elsewhere for competitors, for people who want to buy our things. Because you have to see, when we put tariffs in place, other countries don't pay for the tariffs. We pay for the tariffs. And it was horrible. I mean, for economists to say, no, don't do this, it almost reminds me of what's happening here in 2024 when multiple economists endorsed Kamala Harris's plan to be president of the United States because her economic plan was actually better for the economy compared to Trump's, which is going to be absolutely detrimental. If you look at this map here, this is inflation of what would it have looked like under a Harris presidency versus under a second Trump presidency. And you see the 70% mark. And companies are already preparing for the tariffs from the Trump administration, and they're essentially getting ready to raise their prices on us, the consumers, because we pay tariffs. That's why when Trump said something like, China's going to pay tariffs because we're going to make China pay tariffs so prices can come down in the U.S., that doesn't work. They tried this before in the 30s with the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act. It was absolutely detrimental. We're doing it here again in 2024. I guess the lesson here in history is listen to the economists, listen to the experts. But, you know, this is one of those F around and find out moments because things are about to get bad. If you are someone that is scared of traveling or flying or driving in a car or getting on a train in the United States right now, you are absolutely not alone. The state of aviation and transportation in this country is utterly terrific. Terrific as in, you know, terrifying, you could say. I mean, it's a very, very dismal and unfortunate reality that we are living through. On Sunday this past weekend, a flight from Sacramento to Denver had to turn around because essentially a engine issue that was 20 minutes after takeoff that they had to turn around going back to the airport because of a reported engine issue. On the same day, there was also a bomb scare on an American Airlines flight after a passenger had named their hotspot, "There is a bomb on the plane." Of course, someone thinking that's funny is just absolutely idiotic, especially in a time that we are living in. According to reporting from ABC News, quote, Bruce Steen, 63 years old, Charlotte, North Carolina, was one of the passengers aboard the flight amid the incident at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. Steen told ABC News that he was traveling home from a meeting in Austin on February 7th when the incident occurred. He said that he was seated toward the front of the plane and saw a young man walking up to a flight attendant with a tablet to show her something. The flight attendant immediately called the cockpit, Steen said, and soon the pilot announced that the flight would be returning to the gate due to, quote, an administrative issue. In the meantime, the crew had reported the incident to the Austin Police Department and the Department of Aviation. Steen said, essentially, that after a few minutes, the pilot came back on and announced that someone renamed their hotspot. Steen said the crew said that the hotspot was called "There is a bomb on the flight." Essentially, the plane had to deboard, everyone had to get off, TSA had to rescreen everyone, including their bags on the aircraft, and effectively they could take off again. but that was an actual bomb scare. You also have the situation, of course, what happened in Arizona yesterday. Absolutely tragic. A plane crash at an airport, killing one person as of now. This is the video of that moment happening. It is a crazy world. There is a lot happening right now in the news. I'm your host, Jeremiah Patterson. Thank you all for watching this morning news breakdown, this TJPS morning news breakdown. It has been good to do this. It is good to be back doing this. Please give me your feedback. Do you enjoy these? Comment down below. I would love to have a plethora of comments to respond to. Do you enjoy these? What more do you want me to cover? Is there something happening in your state, in your city, in your town that you feel is not getting enough national attention, that you feel is not getting attention at all in the mainstream media, in the press, that we could be covering here on the Jeremiah Patterson Show? As always, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us personally at tjpsnews@gmail.com, or you can check out us on Substack and Blue Sky for more updates on all things news, politics, and history. Once again, don't forget to comment, subscribe, like, and share. And thank you, everyone. I will be back with the TJPS Morning News Rundown tomorrow.